How strong is your average human in One Piece? Or more specifically, how strong is your average fighter in the One Piece world? While this might sound like a bit of a strange question, we see multiple times in the series characters surviving attacks that they really shouldn't be able to take. So I'll be comparing and scaling the weaker unnamed characters throughout the series, to showcase just how powerful your average pirate or marine would actually be in our world. To begin with, we have to talk about the planet itself. Blue Planet, which is the planet that the One Piece world takes place on, is massive. Multiple calculations place the planet far larger than Earth and around the size of our Sun, meaning that everything done within this series should be under this increased gravity. Although I'll be assuming that the atmosphere is at least somewhat normal, due to the fact that explosion calcs will end up being trillions of times stronger. This kind of messes up the entire video, so I'll just be ignoring it. However, I still will be counting the increased gravity. Due to this, the calculations required for the acceleration downwards and weight for things will be a lot higher than it would normally be. Even just the strength for normally walking around on this planet as though you were a normal person will actually end up being about wall levels of strength, or 5.5 million joules of energy, assuming the difference between the leg movements and your average human punch, which is about 90 joules of energy, making a punch for even an average villager in the One Piece world over 6,000 times stronger. Considering the difference in weight 1 kilogram would have on their planet, this would actually make a lot of sense, with even a single kilogram weighing over 80 tons on that planet, making even your basic normal person way stronger than any normal person on Earth. Now that we have an example, we can start calculating what these characters have done. Starting on the lower end, we have East Blue Usopp, who was able to survive a decently sized explosion, and take a sledgehammer to his back, with the size of the rock and assumed density of it, making this calc small building level. Next, let's move on to the strength of your average pirate, where we see the most well-known fodder calc within the series, where a black cat pirate easily destroys the side of a cliff after being hypnotized. Considering the fact that he physically isn't actually getting stronger, more just thinking it, this is likely the power of your average pirate's hysterical strength. This still makes our most nobody pirate easily be able to punch with building levels of energy. However, their durability should be far higher, with the same pirates being able to take Luffy smashing down the bow of the ship into them, with large building levels of energy. However, this pales in comparison to these two guys, who took a special buggy bowl nearly point blank. Considering the distance the explosion was from them and knowing the buggy bowl's energy amount, which was able to make massive explosions and holes in islands, this would wound up actually being about city block levels of energy. Yes, they were knocked out after this, but apparently they did survive. Now let's move on to the Marines, who can take a lot of damage, being able to survive being flung up into the air and landing with building levels of energy. They should also be able to scale to this explosion in Dressrosa, considering all these attacks are being done by or against normal Marines. With it being said that no one died during this event, it implies that someone had survived this attack. This is also backed up with other calcs which are much higher. During Enies Lobby, Luffy smashed apart multiple buildings and uses them as attacks, using Gatling on rubble to hit Marines with large building levels of energy, and later smashing open a building with city block levels of energy, which is similar in power to what these three Marines had took after Hadruden threw a building on top of them. I should also mention that multiple characters take named attacks from top tier pirates. While it is rare, it does occur, although we won't be going over all of them, instead we'll be going over just this one. During Enies Lobby, Luffy uses Gum Gum Gatling on a bunch of random Marines, in the process making a cone of punches, creating what looks like hundreds of fists in less than a second. With how high up Luffy is from the ground, the speed his fists would have to be moving to cover that distance up and down hundreds of times over in a single frame, alongside the weight of his fist, the kinetic energy from even a single one of Luffy's punches during this attack would actually wound up being city levels of energy, which lines up with the fact that his more stronger attacks during this point in the series range between mountain to island level, making this, while still having a bit of effort, a more casual attack for Luffy by this point in the series. When it comes to speed, your average One Piece character should actually be about the same as your normal person, if they were 3 times the speed of Usain Bolt. Not that much higher, but still impressive. You can also scale their reaction speed a lot higher, being able to scale to characters such as Skypiea Nami. The reason I say this scaling should be valid is mainly due to the next arc, which I know isn't fully canon, but it really should be, where your average Marine was able to keep up and potentially scale to Nami's reaction speed during the arc, where during that part, she was able to react to Eneru's lightning, moving over 100,000 meters a second, or potentially over 90 million meters a second, depending on if you accept Eneru's lightning as being light speed, as per a statement by Oda. Now, I would like to mention that while many of these calcs do sound outlandish, remember that in the story, not many characters actually die. It is a fairly lighthearted show, sometimes, and as such, you end up with characters taking a lot more than you'd normally expect. However, we also have to take into account the fact that these people live in a very dangerous world, surviving massive serpents, pirates that can split the sky, and devil fruits that can literally rain lava from the sky. The ability to even keep up for even just a moment, to even be considered like a pest to these more powerful characters, implies that there is some kind of scaling even for just a little bit. And we see that in the series, with your average armed marine being considered as having 10 Doriki during the Enies Lobby arc. In comparison to the strength of the CP9 members' non-named or Devil Fruit enhanced attacks, this would actually line up fairly well with what the series actually shows us. I should also mention that every single calc in the series is actually lower than any calc that has been showcased to actually kill a marine or random pirate, ignoring any piercing attacks, which seem to be a lot more impressive. This would include stuff such as the One Piece fan letter, where you have multiple characters dying to stuff like Oars Jr. falling over, which ended up being about large town level. I should also mention that the city level scaling I gave for that one Luffy attack is definitely a highball, and there are multiple examples of characters surviving attacks that they really shouldn't, with Kaido in his drunken form hitting one of his beast pirates, and for some reason the person actually surviving. These examples are clearly meant to be a bit more satirical, unlike the rest of the attacks where they're taken in a lot more of a serious light. Hopefully you like this type of video. If there are any other franchises you want me to do a video on, write them in the comments below.